On a spring afternoon in 2024, an unimaginable tragedy rocked the town of Newport, Michigan. 2 children were killed and over a dozen more injured. Mixed with the community's grief was outrage towards the woman responsible. Appallingly, instead of an explanation, she offered only platitudes and excuses. Investigators were left to piece together the whole picture and to answer the question, was this a horrific accident or was it murder? Hi there, I'm Kevin and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case has made national headlines over the past year. Death and injury at a child's birthday party is almost too nightmarish to comprehend. Making this tragedy even worse is the battle for justice that followed. Let's take a look. The Swan Boat Club, which calls itself the friendliest club on the water, sits on the Michigan shoreline of Lake Erie in the town of Newport. The club has been a community hub for many years.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It's time for another $300 drawing here at Swan Boat Club. It is 6:20 p.m.
On Saturday, April 20th, 2024, Kristen Sigler, a longtime bartender at the club, rented the pavilion for her son's 3rd birthday party. The celebration that Kristen planned was a 3-year-old's dream. It was circus-themed. There was a bouncy house, face painting, and a hot dog stand. Family, friends, and club members were invited, along with their children. Beginning at 1 p.m. that afternoon, over 80 people arrived, carrying cards and gifts for the birthday boy. At just before 3 p.m., the partygoers sang happy birthday. The candles were blown out, and everyone indulged in cupcakes. Then, at approximately 1 minute past 3, an SUV accelerating at 44 miles per hour barreled into the side of the building, striking more than a dozen people, sending some into the adjoining room, running over and trapping others. The vehicle came to a stop only after crashing into the far wall, 25 feet into the building. From the driver's seat emerged 66-year-old Marcella Chittister, a local resident and longtime member of the boat club. She appeared dazed and disoriented. As the dust cleared, there was confusion as partygoers scrambled to account for the whereabouts and safety of others. Some of those clearly injured were carried from the building. Others attended to where they were found. Calls to emergency services poured in. Marcella was seated in a chair in the center of the chaos, looking on as a group coordinated to lift her vehicle from the ground in order to release those trapped underneath. As emergency responders arrived on scene, they were first directed to a young boy who had been carried from the crash site. That boy's aunt and sister were pulled from under the vehicle. Officers were directed to Marcella, who appeared uninjured, if a bit confused.
Can you come with me just for a second? This one out here?
Marcella told police on scene that she has a history of seizures. When these occur, she said, she experiences memory loss. This must have been what happened.
What happened?
I passed out.
Okay. Have you been feeling ill or anything like that?
Yes.
What kind of medical conditions do you have?
Seizures.
Seizures? Okay. Going around here?
No, not really. I pulled into the parking lot and I thought I was driving up to the boat club, and evidently I was driving right into the pavilion.
Which direction did you drive from?
I live right down the street.
Okay, so you were coming from that way?
Yes.
This way? When you got to the parking lot, what happened?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you think there's a reason you don't remember? Did something happen, or?
You know what? I have these seizures, and
Okay. Do you have anything where it says like maybe that does your doctor permit you to drive and everything?
I'm cleared to drive now, and I don't have my purse with me, but I do have a card in my purse.
Okay. When's the last time you had a seizure that you know of?
March.
In March?
Yeah. I had it at home, and then I did have one when I was in the hospital.
When you're in the hospital? Okay. Do you think, is your normal behavior when you have a seizure, is it have lapses of memory? Do you,
yes.
That? Okay. So once you got to the parking lot, you don't remember anything?
I don't.
Okay.
As Marcella spoke with police, numerous victims retreated, many taken to the hospital. There were a total of 15 individuals with serious injuries. Among them was Diane Medina, a member of the boat club, who was attending the party with her 3 granddaughters. The girls were not hurt in the crash. Diane, however, would undergo multiple surgeries over the following months. A 14-year-old boy was left in critical condition. He would also undergo multiple surgeries. So would Leah Stith, 18 years old at the time, who was a cousin of the birthday boy. A 12-year-old, Jaden, would spend 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from serious injuries, as would his mother, Mariah Dodds. When Mariah awoke in hospital, her sister was at her bedside, the bearer of more devastating news. The crash had killed 2 of Mariah's children, Jaden's younger siblings, 8-year-old Alanah and 5-year-old Zayn Phillips. The last thing she recalled was being at the birthday party. It was for her godson, her best friend's little boy. She had no recollection of the crash itself. They had just finished lunch. She recounted placing a cake pop in front of both children. After, they planned to head to the bouncy house in the backyard of the club. Instead, she awoke in the ICU to the heartbreaking news: the loss of 2 of her children. "66-year-old Marcella Chidester had lived in Newport, just down the gravel road from the boat club, for nearly 40 years before she drove into it. She and her husband Hugo had purchased their home in the 1980s and lived there alone. They never had any children. Marcella had a close connection to the club, having once served as its commodore, the principal officer who helps to determine the club's direction, including setting the agenda for the year. She and Hugo had even held their wedding at the venue. When she was younger, Marcella had served in the Army. After her discharge, she worked for DTE Energy Management at the nearby Fermi 2 nuclear plant as a strategic buyer. She retired 9 years prior to the crash. Since then, it seems she and Hugo had lived a quiet life in their home near the club. Marcella had not been in great health. She suffered from epileptic-type seizures in her legs that result in paralysis, and she was on prescription medications for other age-related health issues. Despite her seizures, she was licensed to drive. Over the many decades she did so, she had not once received even a parking ticket. After the crash, Marcella was ultimately brought to the hospital, where she received treatment for her injuries. She emerged in a wheelchair and with one arm in a cast. No one had informed Marcella of the details of the incident, and she appeared outwardly to be utterly unaware of the events at the boat club. Recounting the timeline of her day, she recalled having lunch with 2 friends at a local tavern called Verna's at around noon. Marcella had driven her SUV from her home directly to the club, crashing into the pavilion at 3 p.m. The party had started 2 hours earlier. Her lunch date had ended just after 12, which left roughly 2.5 hours unaccounted for. What had she been doing?
All right. When you were done at Verna's, where did you go to?
Went to the boat club.
Straight to the boat club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
They were having a birthday party.
So you woke up in the police car.
Yeah.
Okay. And then basically we know the events after that.
No, I don't recall anything prior to that at all.
Okay. So that's why I'm trying to get a full account of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So from 12:10, we didn't go directly to the boat club. We went home. Did we go to the store? Did we go to a friend's house? What did we do during that time?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. I know that the party started at 3 o'clock, the birthday party. So I was there a little bit before that.
Investigators pulled video surveillance from the boat club and surrounding area to piece together a timeline of Marcella's movements. She may not have been able to recall where she was or what she was doing, but law enforcement was already piecing it together. At just before 3 p.m. on the day of the crash, a neighbor's camera captured Marcella leaving her house. She appears to stumble slightly while exiting and takes each step down from her porch with caution. The retiree proceeds down the path towards her car. The timestamp on the doorbell camera across the street was 1 hour behind real time. That camera showed that roughly 2 minutes before she would crash into the boat club, killing 2 children. Marcella reversed from her driveway, took a wide turn around the detached garage, and drove with speed directly into a neighbor's parked vehicle. The force of that crash pushed the neighbor's car backwards, damaging a fence. Marcella then arrived at the club rapidly. Data from her SUV showed that 5 seconds before impact, she was accelerating. She was moving at 29 miles per hour. 2 seconds later, her speed had increased to 32.9 miles per hour. At the time she made contact with the wall of the building, Marcella was driving at just over 44 miles per hour. Her accelerator was at 96%, which indicated her foot must have been pushing the gas pedal all the way to the floor. Marcella told investigators that she parked at the club, went into the party, dropped her card for the birthday boy into a card box, and sat at the bar until the party commenced, which she believed was at 3 p.m.
Were you upset with anybody there?
No.
No? Would you intentionally drive your car into the boat club?
No.
No?
No.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I...
No.
So you didn't know anybody there at the party? Because you drove right there.
Right.
And you drove through the wall.
Yes.
So you didn't put a card in the card box.
There might have been a card box on the bar.
You didn't go to the bar.
I did. I did go inside the boat club. Before what I thought the party was starting at 3 o'clock.
Well, what Sergeant Hooper's saying here is that we got the video, like we said, you didn't park and go in and then go back to your car and then drive into the building. Okay, you come down from where your house is, going very fast, and you just drove right into the building.
See, I don't remember any of that.
Okay.
Investigators grew frustrated in their attempts to acquire useful insights from Marcella. She was either subconsciously filling in gaps in her memory with false recollections, or she was intentionally lying. Eventually, she was told what the consequences were of her actions.
You probably are the most hated person in the United States.
Why is that?
You drove your car into a kid's birthday party and killed 2 kids.
Oh, no.
And many more are at the hospital in critical condition right now.
Oh, no.
Adults as well.
I'm looking for the truth, Marcella. The truth needs to come out. Because you are the most hated person in the whole United States right now. I guarantee, this is national news. You are the most, so you need to change that narrative right here. You need to change it. There's only one way you can change it, and that's by telling the truth. I've been doing this for a long time. I've sat across the table from killers before, like really, really bad killers. You're not that person.
And I don't remember. Honestly, I do not remember. I would think I would remember something like that.
Well, you're not being truthful about how much you drank. You're not.
Only minutes earlier in the interview room, Marcella admitted to having only a single glass of wine with her lunch that day. Indeed, the receipt obtained from the tavern, as well as the recollection of the bartender who served her, confirmed this fact. She had ordered 1 glass of wine alongside a bowl of chili. It was her assertion that alcohol could aggravate her seizures, which is why she claimed to have primarily moved on to drinking alcohol-free wine. Investigators did not believe that was the whole story. Officers at the scene of the crash had attempted to perform 2 field sobriety tests. The first, following horizontal movement with her eyes, failed as she was unable to focus. The second, counting backwards from 100, failed as well when she stumbled after number 90 and began to confuse the order.
Okay. Now, again, these hard questions, Marcella. How often do you drink?
I was drinking quite a bit there, but I've kind of switched over and I'm doing a free now, more so because of the...
What's a free?
It's alcohol-free. Alcohol-free Cabernet.
Alcohol-free Cabernet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like a, I guess it was like a O'Doul's of wine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marcella's insistence that she had consumed only a single glass of wine prior to the crash was contradicted by her own statements. At the scene, she admitted to officers that she had been drinking and that she did not feel fit to drive.
Have you been drinking at all today?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. When's the last time you had something to drink?
Probably like a half hour ago.
Half an hour ago? What do you drink?
Wine.
Wine? Okay.
On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being like you're stone cold sober, you can drive perfectly, 10 being you're passed out drunk, where do you think you're at right now?
7.
A 7? Okay. Do you think you're okay to drive?
I wouldn't want to drive.
You would let you drive?
No.
Okay.
1 hour following this interview on scene, a blood sample was taken. An officer from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office was tasked with driving the sample directly to the Michigan State Crime Lab and handing it over to forensic experts there, which the officer did. The results of the lab test showed a blood alcohol level of 0.18, over double the legal limit. If the test was accurate, there was no way that Marcella had consumed only a single glass of wine. To register a level that high an hour after the crash, she would have had to consume closer to 10 glasses. The test further showed the presence of the seizure and pain medication gabapentin, a central nervous system depressant. Mixing alcohol and this medication could exacerbate the effects of both. Marcella Chidester was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including second-degree murder for the deaths of Alanah and Zayn Phillips. She was also charged with 2 counts of operating while intoxicated causing death, and 5 counts of operating while intoxicated causing serious injury. Her defense team asserted that the blood alcohol test result was inaccurate, that there were mistakes made in the blood draw at the hospital, that the sample was improperly transported to the lab, and there were further errors in the testing. The crash was an accident, they said, a tragic one that occurred as a result of a seizure. She pleaded not guilty. To the outrage of the community and her many victims, Marcella was released on bond, awaiting trial.
Wanted to just let people know, that I'm so very, very disturbed about the situation, and I don't remember what happened. I can only say that I've been praying for everyone that's been injured. I would never, ever do anything intentional. Never. I mean, that's just not me. And especially to a boat club that I love so much, and I have family and friends there. I think I had a seizure. I think that the same thing that my husband said that I did when I have a seizure is just go straight. And I think when I got in the car, that's what happened. I just had the seizure and probably put my foot on the accelerator and crashed into the building.
These babies haven't even had a burial, a service yet, and this lady's drinking coffee at home with her family, with her loved ones. Personally, will never forget the feeling, the cries from a grown man when he finds out his kids have been taken from him.
Attempts by the defense to have the BAC results thrown out before trial failed. The strategy in front of the jury, however, was still to introduce evidence that these results were, in fact, tainted and unreliable.
What it is, and I expected it, it's a motion denied at this time. They still have to lay the proper foundation at the time of trial. So they can't just come in and say, this is your test result. They have to show that they drew the blood properly, they preserved the blood properly, and they tested it properly. And if they don't do that, then it's not allowed in. At least under the law, it's not allowed in.
In addition to questions of Marcella's BAC, defense attorney Bill Kolovos further asserted that due to no fault of her own, there were questions surrounding Marcella's prescribed medication. Kolovos presented these speculations to the media after his client's family doctor, who oversaw her treatment and wrote her prescriptions, was arrested and charged with multiple felonies. Dr. Garg faced 35 charges related to what was described as a criminal enterprise in which he prescribed heavy painkillers to patients who did not need them.
Her attorney has been saying all along she was told by a doctor she was allowed to drive when she says she had a seizure-like event that caused the crash.
My reaction is, there we go. She texts me and says, my Dr. Garg has been arrested and there's multiple counts of felonies.
She was under his care.
Absolutely.
He was prescribing pills.
Absolutely.
And he had told her that it was okay to drive.
Right. Everyone's going to be really surprised. Don't rush to judgment. Let everything come out.
The trial commenced in March 2025.
I think the proofs will show that when she has a seizure, documented, her feet go down, like real hard, the proofs will show, and her hands too. And then after less than a minute, the proofs will show that it relaxes again and you're a little bit spaced out. And for up to an hour.
Prosecutors began presenting their case by calling victims to tell the jury about their experience on the day of the crash. Heartbreaking testimony was offered by Mariah Dodds. She had recovered from her life-threatening injuries while grieving the loss of 2 of her children. Mariah told jurors about awaking in the hospital to hear the news.
I asked her, why am I here? And she said there's been an accident. And it occurred to my brain that how I was in a building the last time I remember at a birthday party. And then I freaked out because it hit me, where's my kids at? And then that's when she told me that Jaden was, life flew to a hospital and Zayn and Alanah were no longer there.
Defense attorney Kolovos stood to cross-examine Mariah, only to tear up, speak of the loss of his own son, and offer his condolences.
I'm very sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. I lost my son in September. He died peacefully at home. He was older. And every time I work on your case, I think you go. And I think of your children. And you have my deepest sympathy. And I'm human. Might be a defense attorney, but I'm human. And you seem like a much stronger person than me. My prayers are with you and your family. I wish you the best. People keep telling me God has a plan. I guess that's what we got to do. So I just wanted to come out of uniform for a minute and tell you, true heartfelt, that I feel very bad for you and your family. It's a club you don't want to belong to. And I don't have any questions for you. You've gone through enough in life. But
Judge, people appreciate
I'm
Mr.
done.
Phillips'
I'm done.
sentiment, but
Okay, thank you
this
very
isn't the
much.
time to play. Yes. Thank you.
Calvos called Kelly Thornton, who waited on Marcella at Verna's, the local tavern, several hours before the crash. Thornton told jurors that Marcella had 1 glass of wine, a water, and a cup of white chicken chili. She said the 66-year-old did not appear intoxicated when she served her, but that she did not see her leave. Then they called an expert witness upon whose testimony their defense relied, forensic toxicologist Okori Okorocha. Okorocha testified that Marcella's blood sample showed the presence of acetone, the chemical compound found in nail polish remover. It does not occur naturally in the body, but would appear in the sample due to fermentation, according to Okorocha. That fermentation could occur if the sample was not properly preserved, if it was not placed in a fridge or freezer immediately, for example. This fermentation would spoil the results of an alcohol test, returning a higher result than was strictly accurate.
But you're absolutely positive before this jury that those results are not accurate according to your opinion, professional opinion, and according to the records you viewed from the state. The 0.18 would not be accurate.
Correct. It would not be accurate for the time of the time the blood was taken.
You stated that you don't believe at the time of the draw her blood alcohol was 0.18. What do you believe it was?
We can't determine the amount of error associated with fermentation based on the byproducts.
Was her blood alcohol higher than a 0.18?
Not with fermentation, no. It would have to be lower at the time of the draw.
So her blood alcohol increased from the time of the draw to the time of the testing.
That's what fermentation does.
How much do you believe she had to drink based on the testing results that you've looked at?
I cannot tell because of the unreliability of the testing.
The prosecution countered the assertion that the BAC was inaccurate with multiple witnesses from the Michigan State Police's lab. They also called Samantha Beecham, who supervises the toxicology lab. It was her job to check the sample for any irregularities, and she said she did not find any. There was one more glaring issue with the defense's theory. They had no direct evidence that Marcella had actually experienced a seizure at the time of the crash. There was a wealth of evidence, however, that she had been drinking wine all day. The prosecution called a local store clerk to the stand who testified to selling Marcella 1 full-size bottle of red wine and 4 smaller bottles of Pinot Grigio at 9:01 a.m., just 1 minute after the store opened on the morning of the crash. These bottles were not alcohol-free. When police searched the Chidester house, they found a garbage bin full of corresponding empty bottles. They only found empty bottles of wine in the house. They also found a camera. Internal footage from the Chidester home showed Marcella returning from the store and carrying in her hand what appeared to be one of the smaller 187 milliliter bottles of wine at 9:24 a.m. The kitchen camera has a timestamp 1 hour earlier than real time. At 10:30 a.m., she carried an empty bottle back into the kitchen. A small bottle is visible again in her hand at 10:45. By 12:35, she is captured returning from her lunch at Verna's. It was undisputed that she had consumed another glass of wine while she was there. At 2:10 that afternoon, the camera now captured her carrying a large glass of red. Roughly 20 minutes later, she wandered in to refill that glass. The bottle, presumably the one purchased that morning, is visible on the edge of the screen sitting on the kitchen countertop. That last glass was refilled less than a half an hour before she chose to get behind the wheel of her SUV, back into her neighbor's vehicle, and then drive 44 miles per hour into a child's birthday party.
At the moment she crashed into that truck, she had to know things were not right. But she continued on. She continued on at full speed and drove her car into a 3-year-old's birthday party, into a building, a route that she knew very, very well. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a typical drunk driving crash. Not at all. She didn't cross a center line and strike oncoming traffic. She didn't misjudge a red light and rear end someone. At almost 45 miles an hour, she drove through the wall of a building that she had been to countless times. That's what makes this worse than OWI causing death alone. She drove her car into an occupied building knowing she was unfit to operate a vehicle. And if she didn't know she was unfit to drive when she got behind the wheel, she knew it after she hit her neighbor's truck.
The jury returned with their verdict after less than 2 hours.
We, the jury, find as follows. Count 1, guilty of murder in the second degree of Alanah Grace Phillips. Count 2, guilty of murder in the second degree of Zayn Isaac Phillips. Count 3, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing the death of Alanah Grace Phillips. Count 4, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing the death of Zayn Isaac Phillips.
Marcella was found guilty on all counts.
Guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing serious impairment of a body function to Mariah Lynn Dodds. Count 6, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing serious impairment of a body function to Edward Thomas Smothers.
Brian Phillips, the father of Alanah and Zayn, expressed his relief at the verdict, though admitted that nothing could give him peace after the loss of his children.
Do you feel with this verdict you're able to have some type of peace?
After I leave here, I'm going to their gravesite and let them know how today went. I will never get peace. I never will find peace with this, but I'm glad that the verdict came back on all counts. I am happy with that verdict.
1 month later, Marcella was to receive her sentence from Judge Daniel White. In an unusual move, during the period of time between the verdict and the sentencing hearing, Marcella fired her attorney. According to Bill Kolovos, he planned to handle the appeal and was surprised to learn upon arriving at the county jail to see his client that he had been dismissed. At the hearing, the new defense counsel made it clear that he did not support the methods employed by his predecessor.
Before I get into what I wanted to talk about with my sentencing memorandum, I wish I would have been here. I wish I would have been here a long time ago in this case. I, like many of our community, colleagues of ours, was first found out about this case from the media, from watching the news. And from what I saw, I was disgusted. I can't speak to why former counsel would go on the news and invite this type of scrutiny into this case when clearly people were grieving. But I thought it was disgusting. I truly do. It does not change what happened.
Victims from the crash offered impact statements to the court.
Remembering their smiles, their touch, their sense, I'm telling you, you're the best mom ever. Their fun personalities. Remembering the way their heartbeats felt when they were scared. Remembering the silly voices they would do and nurturing them. when they were sick or hurt or just cuddling them, because that's what made me feel alive.
I've been thinking about what I was going to say to you for over a year. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy. I can't help it. Say I'm so very, very sorry for the loss of your children. I prayed for them every day. And I asked that their father would also forgive me, as well as the people that were injured. I never meant to harm those children or everyone that was involved in the accident. And the only thing that I can say is, I'm so very sorry. And I never, ever meant to come across as not being sorrowful.
In his sentencing statements to the court, Judge White considered that throughout the case, Marcella had continued to assert that she had only consumed a single glass of wine that day. She refused to be placed in treatment for alcohol addiction, as she did not believe she was an alcoholic, a fact disputed by the community that knew her for years. The judge speculated that her further insistence that she could not recall the events of the day may be a way to cope with the horrific nature of her actions, because this memory loss had never been fully explained. Marcella Chittister was sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison. At the age of 67, and with her existing health issues, it is tantamount to a life sentence. Marcella's family doctor, Dr. Garg, did not testify at her trial. Kolovos had hoped that the doctor would admit to gross negligence on the stand for not suspending Marcella's license after her last seizure-like episode. It seems the doctor did not wish to incriminate himself while he stood accused of 35 felonies. Kolovos, although no longer handling her appeal, has stated that he firmly believes her conviction will be overturned and that she will receive a new trial. And that was the tragic case of Alanah and Zayn Phillips and the many other victims of the Swan Boat Club crash. A group of those impacted filed a lawsuit against Marcella, her insurance company, and the boat club seeking damages, in part to assist with their medical bills. A handful of GoFundMe pages have also been set up for this purpose. Links to these pages can be found in the description below. Thank you for joining me, and a special thanks this week to Pamela Clover, Jeannie Akana, Naomi Miller, and Joby for joining our Members Lounge. All support of the channel is truly appreciated, and the extra support from members goes a long way to keeping us going. So thank you once again. I'm Kevin, this is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.
I need that feeling that you brought. Who learned the lesson that you taught? To make a killing's what they saw. Found out the lounge just what you thought.